Log believed that Ramesses III's body showed no obvious wounds. An examination of the mummy by a German forensic team, televised in the documentary Ramesses, Mummy King Mystery on the Science Channel in 2011, showed excessive bandages around the neck. A subsequent CT scan that was done in Egypt by Ashraf Selim and Sahar Salim, professors of radiology at Cairo University, revealed that beneath the bandages was a deep knife wound across the throat, deep enough to reach the vertebrae. According to the documentary narrator, it was a wound no one could have survived. The CT scan revealed that his throat was cut to the bone, severing the trachea, esophagus, and blood vessels, which would have been rapidly fatal. The December 2012 issue of the British Medical Journal quoted the conclusion of the study of the team of researchers, led by Zahi Hawass, the former head of the Egyptian Supreme Council of Antiquity, and his Egyptian team, as well as Albert Zink from the Institute for Mummies and the Iceman of Uruk Research in Bolzano, Italy, which stated that conspirators murdered Ramesses III by cutting his throat. Zink observed in an interview that the cut to Ramesses III's throat is very deep and quite large. It really goes down almost down to the bone spine. It must have been a lethal injury. A subsequent study of the CT scan of the mummy of Ramesses III's body by Sahar Salim revealed that the left big toe was likely chopped by a heavy sharp object, like an axe. There were no signs of bone healing, so this injury must have happened shortly before death. The embalmers placed a prosthesis-like object made of linen in place of the amputated toe. The embalmers placed 6 amulets around both feet and ankles for magical healing of the wound for the life after. This additional injury of the foot supports the assassination of the pharaoh, likely by the hands of multiple assailants using different weapons. Before this discovery, it had been speculated that Ramesses III had been killed by means that would not have left a mark on the body. Among the conspirators were practitioners of magic, who might well have used poison. Some had put forth the hypothesis that a snakebite from a viper was the cause of the king's death. His mummy includes an amulet to protect Ramesses III in the afterlife from snakes. The servant in charge of his food and drink were also among the listed conspirators, but there were also other conspirators who were called the Snake and the Lord of Snakes. In one respect, the conspirators certainly failed. The crown passed to the king's designated successor, Ramesses IV. Ramesses III may have been doubtful as to the latter's chances of succeeding him, given that, in the Great Harris Papyrus, he implored Amun to ensure his son's rights. The Zinc unit determined that the mummy of an unknown man buried with Ramesses was, because of the proven genetic relationship and a mummification process that suggested punishment, a good candidate for the pharaoh's son, Pentaweret, who was the only son to revolt against his father. It was impossible to determine his cause of death. Both mummies were predicted by Whit-Athy star predictor to share the Y chromosomal haplogroup E1b1av38 and 50% of their genetic material, which pointed to a father-son relationship. In 2010, Hawass et al. Undertook detailed anthropological, radiological, and genetic studies as part of the King Tutankhamun family project. The objectives included attempting to determine familial relationships among 11 royal mummies of the New Kingdom, as well to research for pathological features including potential inherited disorders and infectious diseases. In 2012, Hawass et al. Undertook an anthropological, forensic, radiological, and genetic study of the 20th dynasty mummies of Ramesses III and an unknown man, which were found together. In 2022, Keita analyzed 8 short tandem Loki STR data, published as part of these studies by Hawass et al., using an algorithm that only has 3 choices: Eurasians, Sub-Saharan Africans, and East Asians. Using these 3 options, Keita concluded that the majority of the samples, which included the genetic remains of Ramesses III and Tutankhamun, had a population affinity with Sub-Saharan Africans in one affinity analysis. However, Keita cautioned that this does not mean that the royal mummies lacked other affiliations, which he argued had been obscured in typological thinking. Keita further added that different data and algorithms might give different results, which reflects the complexity of biological heritage and the associated interpretation. The Great Harris Papyrus, or Papyrus Harrisi, which was commissioned by his son and chosen successor Ramesses IV, chronicles this king's vast donations of land, gold statues, and monumental construction to Egypt's various temples at Pyramus, Heliopolis, Memphis, Athribis, Hermopolis, Abydos, Coptos, El Kab, and various cities in Nubia. It also records that the king dispatched a trading expedition to the land of Punt and quarried the copper mines of Timna in southern Canaan. Papyrus Harrisi records some of Ramesses III's activities. I sent my emissaries to the land of Atika, Timna, to the great copper mines which are there. Their ships carried them along, and others went overland on their donkeys. It had not been heard of since the time of any earlier king. Their mines were found, and they yielded copper which was loaded by tens of thousands into their ships, they being sent in their care to Egypt, and arriving safely. P. Harrisi, 78. 1-4 Ramesses began the reconstruction of the temple of Khonsu at Karnak from the foundations of an earlier temple of Amenhotep III, and completed the temple of Medinet Habu around his year 12. He decorated the walls of his Medinet Habu temple with scenes of his naval and land battles against the Sea Peoples. This monument stands today as one of the best preserved temples of the New Kingdom. The mummy of Ramesses III was discovered by antiquarians in 1886 and is regarded as the prototypical Egyptian mummy in numerous Hollywood movies. His tomb Covey 11 is one of the largest in the Valley of the Kings. In 1980, James Harris and Edward F. Went conducted a series of X-ray examinations on New Kingdom pharaohs' crania and skeletal remains, which included the mummified remains of Ramesses III. The analysis in general found strong similarities between the New Kingdom rulers of the 19th dynasty and 20th dynasty with Mesolithic Nubian samples. The authors also noted affinities with modern Mediterranean populations of Levantine origin. Harris and Went suggested this represented admixture, as the Ramessides were of northern origin. In April 2021, his mummy was moved from the Museum of Egyptian Antiquities to the National Museum of Egyptian Civilization, along with those of 17 other kings and 4 queens, in an event termed the Pharaoh's Golden Parade. There is uncertainty regarding the exact dates of the reign of Ramesses III. This uncertainty affects the dating of the Late Bronze or Iron Age transition in the Levant. This transition is defined by the appearance of Mycenaean Lachic 1b Philistine pottery in the coastal plain of Palestine, generally assumed to correspond to the settlement of Sea Peoples there at the 8th year of Ramesses III. Radiocarbon dates and other external evidence permit this transition to be as late as 1100 BC, compared to the conventional dating of c. 1179 BC. Some scientists have tried to establish a chronological point for this pharaoh's reign at 1159 BC, based on a 1999 dating of the Hekla III eruption of the Hekla volcano in Iceland. Since contemporary records show that the king experienced difficulties provisioning his workmen at Deir el-Medina with supplies in his 29th year, this dating of Hekla III might connect his 28th or 29th regnal year to c. 1159 BC. A minor discrepancy of 1 year is possible, since Egypt's granaries could have had reserves to cope with at least a single bad year of crop harvests following the onset of the disaster. This implies that the king's reign would have ended just 3 to 4 years later, around 1156 or 1155 BC. Arrival date of 2900 BP 950 BC has since been proposed by scientists based on a ray examination of the volcanic layer, given that no Egyptologist dates Ramesses III's reign to as late as 1000 BC. This would mean that the Hekla III eruption presumably occurred well after Ramesses III's reign. A 2002 study using high-precision radiocarbon dating of a peat deposit containing ash layers put this eruption in the range 1087 to 1006 BC. Ramesses III prisoner tiles, inlay figures, faience and glass of the traditional enemies of ancient Egypt from Medinet Habu at the Museum of Fine Arts, Boston. From left, two Nubians, Philistine, Amorite, Syrian. Hittite Ramesses III talking with the Theban triad, Amun, Mut, and Khonsu. The Great Harris Papyrus at the British Museum, c. 1150 BC. Image taken from the book The Search for Ancient Egypt p. 91 by Jean Vercutter.